Hey, it's Nikki. Before we start the podcast, I have something special for you as a listener. Around here in the month of February at Sales Maven, it is a special month for us because we love to celebrate the important clients in our life. So I thought it would be fun to do something and extend it to the listeners this year. That means I have put together a free training for you as a listener that you can go and take advantage of it. It's all about mastering the sales conversation. This is a quick training. It's there to enhance what you're already doing now and really amplify your success in closing more business. To go watch the training, you're going to want to go to yoursalesmaven.com/free training, and you can take advantage of it right now. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. And when you're ready, start the podcast.
Are you ready to boost your confidence when selling so you're able to close more deals? Nikki Rausch will show you how to build a foundation of skills and a mindset that creates sales success without feeling pushy or salesy and without fear of rejection. She is a sales strategist and coach with more than 25 years of sales experience and is master certified in neuro-linguistic programming. This is a radically different approach to selling. It's a no sleaze, no slime, and no stress approach to building your business. This is Sales Maven. Here's Nikki.
Welcome to the Sales Maven podcast. I'm your host, Nikki Rausch. I am so thrilled that you are here to spend this time with me. Thank you so much for doing that. Today's episode, we are going to be talking about taking yourself off of autopilot. There's a few areas that can be very easy to get yourself into this autopilot. So first of all, let's talk about what autopilot kind of means. In my mind, it's like the task of least resistance in a way. It's like, what's the bare minimum I can do to just keep going without having to put much thought or energy or effort into whatever it is that I'm doing. And this autopilot can sometimes be a real hindrance to our business, our ability to grow our business, our ability to connect with new and interesting people. So I want to bring some things into your awareness today so that you can start to think about what areas of your business are you on autopilot and is it serving you? Like, hey, I'm all for easy. I love easy, but there are certain times and certain instances where getting into this autopilot mindset isn't really going to allow for any growth. What is that saying? Like, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got, or something like that. And that's what I think about. There's been a couple things that have come up in coaching sessions with clients recently that has really got this, like my mind kind of spinning around this. And believe me, I'm sure that there are areas of my life I need to continue to really dig in and ask myself some of the questions I'm going to challenge you to ask yourself, or some places where you might think about in your own business, this autopilot. And is it helping or is it actually hindering? Okay. So before we actually dive into that, I do just want to take a second and thank those of you who have left podcast reviews. Thank you so much. It's been really, really fun to read those. And I'm so grateful when you share about a podcast. As a matter of fact, one of my listeners, reached out to me recently and shared an image that their boss had actually sent out to the whole sales team, a link to one of my episodes. And she was just sharing how excited she was because she turned her boss onto the podcast, and her boss then listened and liked one of the episodes so much that she shared it with the whole sales team and encouraged them to listen. I am so incredibly flattered by that. So I just want to say thank you so much for turning other people onto the podcast. It means the world to me. Thank you for your reviews. Thank you for your feedback. Those of you who take time to reach out and share like what you liked about the episode, all of that stuff, it touches those like tender places in my heart. It makes my day. There are days where it's like, that is the thing that keeps me going, is to have these like positive, nice things that people have to say, or this success that they've had as a result. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. If you haven't left a review yet for the podcast, or if you've never shared it with somebody, would you, one, either leave a review, and or would you share it with somebody? Would you let people know about the podcast? And as in particular, an episode that you think they might find value in, please share it with those people. Okay, let's dig into this autopilot. Now, first one I want you to really think about is some of these automations that you have set up. This makes sense, right? Autopilot automations. One of them is your calendar link. When is the last time you looked at what the language is around your calendar link when you're sending it to people to schedule times with you? Hopefully, if you've been listening to my podcast for a while, you know that you want to make your calendar link be interesting and about the person who's going to schedule the appointment, not about you and how busy you are and how important you are, because that doesn't really build any rapport with the person who's going to schedule with you. So have you looked at your calendar link recently? And if not, it might be time for you to review it and just check to see what is that language. And could you tweak it a little bit to make it even more friendly? Could you tweak it to build more rapport with people when they click on that link? So take a look at your calendar link if you haven't recently, because you know me, it's all about relationship first, rapport always. Do things that make people excited to get on calls with you, excited to take next steps with you, excited to learn more about what it is that you offer, okay? And then the other thing that I would say about some of these automations is your email sequences. When is the last time you looked at your auto email sequences, like somebody's opting into your list? Have you looked to see, are they working? And if they're not working, do they need to be tweaked? Or maybe there's some outdated information in there. We find these on my sequences. I have a lot of sequences. So we do find these regularly where it's like, oh, goodness, I don't even offer that anymore, or that needs to come off. And here's what I want to have it say instead. And as a matter of fact, I was just having, I had a call the other day with my business manager, and we were talking about sequence in particular. And she was sharing, oh, okay, so when people download this thing, this is the offer that comes right behind it. And I was like, I think we can do better. Like, I think I can make an offer that's more relevant. Let's switch out this offer. But again, like I have to initiate that. There's nobody in my business who's going to like initiate that. And there may not be anybody in your business who's initiating that for you. Like, hey, does this offer really make sense? And if not, does it need to be tweaked? So I want to encourage you to look at your automations, your email sequence automations, because it might be time to update those. You know, one of the things that comes up a lot in the Sales Maven Society is making sure that you are making clear offers and or letting people know ways to work with you. I actually have this, it goes in my newsletter, and I put it at the front of my workbooks. It's like ways to work with Nikki. And it has these like really simple little like, you know, it's this, it's this, it's this, it's this. It's very simple. But by doing that, it plants seeds for the person who's looking at it or reading it that might go like, oh, I didn't know that Nikki offered strategy sessions, or, oh, I wonder what a strategy session with Nikki is like, because they're actually seeing it on the list. So if you're sending out automations, if you're putting out content and you're never having like ways to work with you, like your offers shouldn't be the best kept secrets, right? Like I know we hear about this a lot where people will share like, you don't want to be the best kept secret. Like you don't want your website to be the best kept secret. You don't want your business to be the best kept secret. And it's like people get that, but they don't ever think about their offers, the ways that people can work with you. If you've never promoted a certain offer, that might be why you've never sold it, right? So you decide, of course, what you want to promote and what you want to put out there, but it might be time for you to put this out there. As a matter of fact, somebody who listened, she's an awesome person and a regular listener to the podcast. She posted in the Sales Maven Society this week about one of the episodes I was encouraging people to email their list and put out like a call to action to their list. And so she just posted in the Sales Maven Society that she did that. And I think she even said she has a relatively small list, but that she put it out there and she booked like 3 discovery calls from it. So are you the best kept secret? Like, what are your autoresponders? Are you putting information out there about how people can work with you, about offers, about how to get on a call with you? If people don't know that you do calls, now, of course, only say that if you do calls, but if you do calls and you never tell people that you do calls, you're probably not booking a lot of calls, okay? Discovery calls or ways to work with you calls, whatever that is. So make it super easy. So check your auto sequences and see if it's time for them to be updated, because, it's like, I know the angst that can go in to writing a sequence. And maybe by the time you're done writing it, you're like, I never want to look at that thing again. It took so much effort. I get that. But yet you spent all this time and effort writing it. So go back and look at them. See if you can tweak it. See if you can make it better. I swear, and I do this all day long for people. I offer edits in the Sales Maven Society. People post like, hey, I'm going to send this email. Nikki, do you have any edits for me? Or any ways that I can make it better? Or, I really want to say this to a client, but I'm not quite sure how to say it. So I always ask them, write it up for me, say it exactly how you think you want to say it. And then I'll offer some tweaks or some adjustments to it. And so I do this all day long for people until I start looking at my stuff. And when I look at my own stuff, I'm always like, dang, I can make that sentence better. This isn't as clear as I want it to be. I can go and I can add some clarity here, or I can change up this sentence and it'll actually land better to the reader. So I actually find by going back and looking at my stuff later, I can make it better. Because when I'm writing it the first time, it's like, I'm doing the best I can. I'm actually a better editor, I think, than I am writer. And although I do think of myself as a writer. So go back, look at your auto sequences, see if it's time to make some updates to them. Okay, here's the second thing that I think people can get on autopilot. And this is some of those like assumptions that we make about other people's motives. Now, we all know that we probably get bombarded. You probably do. I know I do get bombarded with people that are constantly sending me DMs that it's just like straight up sales, like garbage. They don't have permission to sell to me. They're not offering anything that's unique or interesting or anything I've expressed interest in. Like we get those. We all get those, right? Emails, all of that. And I want to encourage you to make sure that you're not just automatically deleting and never even like scanning some of those messages or invitations to connect on LinkedIn or whatever that is, or making some of these like this like autopilot, like, oh, this person is just trying to sell to me, so I'm going to completely blow them off. I had this conversation with a client earlier. She was sharing that she had seen somebody's name pop up, and it was somebody that she has known, hasn't talked to in a really long time, but knew pretty well at one point, and realized that they weren't connected on LinkedIn. And so she sent a little note and asked to connect on LinkedIn. And this person's automatic response is, I'm not interested in what you're selling. I'm not accepting your request. And then, of course, like her feelings felt a little bit hurt, as would mine. Like I would be like, geez. But the thing is, she wasn't trying to sell this person anything. She just thought it'd be nice to request. And I told her, I'm like, it sounds to me like here's somebody who's showing up on autopilot, probably didn't even take the time to really read your message and just assumed that the only reason you would ever want to connect with him or her is to sell them something. And I kind of feel bad for that person, honestly. And I wonder, like, is that me sometimes? And is it you sometimes? Are you making broad brush assumptions that everybody who sends you a connection is just trying to sell you something, or everybody who does this or does that is, has this ulterior motive? Because sometimes, and that may be true, like give credit where credit is due. You probably have some past experience where that feels like it's true. But check these like autopilot responses, because there might be some little gold in there somewhere that could actually open a door and lead to some really amazing connection or opportunity that you just dismissed outright because you didn't even check to see. Now, being candid here, like I absolutely get requests that come through on LinkedIn, and I can tell just by the way the person has written it. Like you look at how they've written their bio, it's like, this is going to be a straight up sales thing. So if all they're doing is selling lists, right? Like that's an auto delete for me. So I will say I'm on autopilot on that, but I still look to see. So I guess I'm not on autopilot because I'm still looking to see what's their bio say, what are they saying here? And if they're saying this, then yes, okay, I'm not going to accept this request. But I actually got one the other day and I thought to myself, like, should I accept this? It wasn't list. They weren't selling a list, but it was something the way that it was written. I was like, they're probably going to just follow up right with like a hard sell. And I'll probably regret, accepting this. But I accepted it because I don't want to show up in my life and in my business on autopilot. I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt and let the other person either prove me right or prove me wrong, but I still want to give them the opportunity to like, it's their opportunity to like either win or lose. Okay. So I accepted it and they actually sent this really sweet message to me, which then I was able to respond back. Now, they haven't tried to sell me anything. I'm not trying to sell them anything. I'm looking to make a real connection and I'm interested to see if they are too. But I was willing to like accept the like friend request, or I guess it was on LinkedIn. So the LinkedIn, I don't know how you say that. The LinkedIn request. I feel like I should be asking Louise Brogan, who's my resident LinkedIn expert. If you don't know LinkedIn with Louise, totally recommend her. She has a great podcast and an amazing presence on LinkedIn. So yeah. So anyway, check to see what is this about? Be willing to be open. And yes, I realize it might take a little bit of time, but gosh, I wouldn't want you to dismiss an opportunity outright that could actually open some amazing door for you or for your business or for this person to connect you with your next ideal client or for them to bring a speaking opportunity or a podcast guesting opportunity. You just never know. So be willing to take yourself off of autopilot and give people the opportunity to sink or swim on their own. But they at least let them get in the water, I guess I'm saying. Okay. Now, the other thing that can sometimes happen that I think can be autopilot is we will make, and I know I've talked about this on the podcast before. Well, I feel like I talk about all the same things all the time. So whether you've heard it on the podcast or you've heard it in the Sales Maven Society or you've heard me speak about it or whatever, you may have heard this before. Unless this is our first time getting to connect and first time you listening to the podcast. But one of the things that can sometimes happen is when we're in a position to work with somebody, make an offer to somebody, sell something to somebody, we can sometimes project limiting beliefs onto other people. Like, oh, so-and-so would never hire me because of this or that reason. I don't know if I've actually shared this story on the podcast, but I know that fairly early on into my business, I'd only been in business for maybe a couple years. Well, actually, let me back up. Before I even started my business, I was just thinking about starting the business, but I hadn't really formed anything yet. And I got invited to go to this event, and the speaker at the event, it was like a mini training. And it was an evening. I didn't know anybody. I got invited, but the person who invited me ended up not being able to go. So I registered. I went by myself. I didn't know anybody there. And the speaker at this event was somebody who was pretty well known, kind of in their own way, like a celebrity in the area where I lived. This person was very, very well known, very recognizable face, very recognizable name, who was doing this training. And I remember sitting there in this training and being in awe of this person because one, like I knew who this person was because of the area that I lived in. And this person was so recognizable in the area. So she did this training. It was awesome. I think I went up at the end and introduced myself because I just thought, well, I'd like to know her or like at least introduce myself in some way. And then fast forward, I don't know, a year, maybe two into my business. And it turned out that her and I were both speaking at an event. And I ended up going to her presentation was at a different time than my presentation was. It was like those breakout rooms, where they have speakers doing stuff. So she had a presentation at a different time than I did. So I went to her presentation. It was actually before mine. And I, sat in the room. And then when it was over, I went back up and thanked her and just said, I don't know, not that you would ever remember this, but we actually met like a year ago. I heard you speak on this topic and I remember this one thing that you shared. It was so interesting. And she was so gracious to me. And she was like, hey, so it says you're a speaker. What are you speaking on? So I told her what I was speaking on. She's like, oh, I'm going to try to come to your presentation. So I just thought she was being kind. Maybe she felt like, oh, this person was nice. She came up, she said something nice to me. So maybe I'll go to her presentation. But in my mind, I'm just thinking she's just being nice. And she did. She came to my presentation. She was very engaged. She actually filled out to get my freebie at the end. And I just thought, oh, she was just being nice. Because in my mind, I'm thinking, why would this person who's so well known, who's so recognizable, like really kind of in her own way, she's a celebrity in the area where we lived because she was on TV. And I never in my wildest dreams thought she would ever hire me. Well, it turns out she did want to hire me. But she had to give me some pretty big buying signals because in my mind, why would she ever work with me? And I hear this a lot with my own clients, this mindset thing that I obviously struggle with too, is we make these assumptions that people wouldn't want to work with us. We get into this autopilot. We think we know everything about everybody. And we think, well, this person would never need help with what it is that I do. So in my case, this person would never need help with sales. She's so well known, like who's going to say no to her? Well, it turned out, in fact, that she did want help with sales and she became a really great client and was a client for about a year and a half. She was a fantastic client, loved supporting and working with her. And I was super flattered and honored that she would want to work with me. But this autopilot thing can get in the way. And I hear this over and over again with my clients. Now, I will say I've had enough of these. I've had enough of these examples in the last, 8 years that I've been in business of like my own mindset of like, oh, so-and-so wouldn't want to work with me. And then it turns out that they end up becoming a client, that now I'm always trying to kind of quiet that autopilot, like go-to mode of so-and-so would never hire me because they don't need my help or why would they hire me? I'm just this little old nobody. They're this like, really important person or whatever. But it's such a disservice because how unfortunate people are that miss out on working with you because you're making these like auto judgments, this like, oh, so-and-so would never work with me. So I bring this up and I share this on the podcast because I really want to challenge you to question these autopilot assumptions about who will work with you and who won't work with you. Be willing to invite people, be willing to put offers out there, be willing to put choice in front of people. If they show some interest, be willing to invite them, stretch outside your comfort zone and do it anyway, because you never know, you might just get to work with like some of the best people ever. Now, here's another autopilot. This is the last one, and then we're going to bring this episode to a close. But the autopilot is your pricing, that you have to continue to offer the same price to clients. You can never raise the price to your existing clients. Now, I know I've talked about pricing. I've talked about raising pricing before, but this is one of those, I find like it's an autopilot thing. And I had a conversation last week with a client who was trying to explain to me, well, one, every time I talk to her, she talks about she's so busy and her business is booming, but she's so busy that she's buried. And she's almost to the point where she cannot take on any clients. So of course I'm saying to her, okay, we got to look at your pricing. It's time to raise your pricing. We got to be willing to let some people go so that you can bring on some higher paying clients, free up your schedule a little bit and still deliver and make the kind of money that you want to make. And so, she kind of started off the meeting like, Nikki, I am so buried. I'm really overwhelmed. I know that you've told me to raise my price. I haven't done it since we last talked because I just am so worried that people who worked with me last year, when they, come back this year and I give them this new higher price, they're going to freak out. So it's just better for her to stay on autopilot and give them the low price so she doesn't have to deal with the freak out. So I was like, okay, I'm going to give you a solution to this. So I want to offer this to you too, if this resonates with you at all. If you're staying on autopilot on this, everybody gets this price, I'm not going to raise anybody's price, because what if they freak out when the price goes up? Some people will leave. You have to be willing to bear the brunt of that. I get it. And I may have shared this on the podcast too. One of the ways that you can prepare yourself for this is you raise your price. When the person comes, you give the new price, and then you wait and see what they say next. 9 out of 10 of them are going to be like, okay, that's fine. But the 1 in 10 that's like, oh, what? Have a response prepared. Have a response prepared for what you might say to that person. And then you can confidently walk into this new pricing. You no longer have to stay on autopilot with people who paid you one time before and now maybe are coming back for kind of a second round with you or a third round or whatever it is. Just have an answer prepared. And then that way you're ready. Your confidence is there. Now with her, I gave her 2 possible responses, but the one that she ended up liking is I said, what if you just say to them, I know that you paid this price last year. This is the new price. Because I value your business, I would like to split the difference with you, and I'll offer it to you at only a 50% increase to whatever the full 100% increase was. And she was like, oh my gosh, yes. Okay, so that's just having that prepared answer. And then now, if that's the confidence that you need to raise your price, perfect. Go do it. Raise the price. All right. Okay. So I hope you found this episode helpful. This idea of autopilot, be looking for places that you might realize oh, am I on autopilot right now? Do I need to take a step back? Do I need to reevaluate some things? And by doing that, am I going to help my business grow? And am I going to grow personally as well? All right. Now, if you have started listening to the podcast in 2022, you might have heard that the new theme of the year is the year of connection. So I'm sharing some of my connections with you. These are people who have made an impact in my life and in my business, and people who I think can make an impact and for your business and in your life as well. So today I want to give a shout out to Julie Fry of Your Expert Guest. Julie has been on the podcast before, but I don't know that I've called it out in this way. So I just want to give a huge shout out to Julie. Julie and I have known each other for many years. Julie is she's maybe up there as the number 1 or number 2 most impactful person that has, she's made the biggest impact on my business. She's opened doors for me. She's made introductions. She's sent clients my way. She's been my accountability partner. She was my accountability partner for years. She's genuinely one of the best people I know. But I want to give a shout out for what she does for me now for her business. So her business is Your Guest Expert, and she books people on podcasts. So she's my booker. She actively goes and finds, she does the research. She finds the podcast that she connects with the host of the podcast. She'll send them a potential pitch about having me as a guest. And over and over again, I will go as a guest on a podcast, and the host will say to me before the episode starts to record, they'll say, you're the only person we've ever accepted a pitch from. Usually we only bring people on the podcast that we already know. And I just want to say that's because of Julie, because she does her homework. She doesn't just write these generic crappy pitches that we all get as podcasters. She writes very specific pitch that's specific to the podcast. And, it's not that she doesn't get any no's. Of course she gets no's, but she gets a lot of yeses. I do a lot of guesting on podcasts, and I will say that's because Julie opens those doors for me. And by her opening those doors, that is how a lot of people find my way find their way to my podcast. It's how people find their way to work with me. It's opportunities come my way as a result of it. So Julie is super impactful. And she's somebody I recommend getting to know and connecting with because she's also just a really amazing person. So you can find Julie's website at yourguestexpert.com. So super easy. But the best way to connect with Julie is on LinkedIn because she tends to hang out there. So it's Julie Fry, Fry. So go connect with her on LinkedIn if you haven't yet. She's amazing. All right. Now, if you and I haven't connected, let's do that. I tend to hang out on LinkedIn and on Instagram. If you're not in the Sales Maven Society, that's the best. Those are the two best places to connect with me. I'd love to hear from you. Reach out. Let me know. What did you find helpful about this podcast episode? What are your takeaways? What are you going to implement as a result? I would love to hear from you. And if you're not in the Sales Maven Society yet and you'd like to come join, hey, come do that. We have a special offer for you to join, $47 for your first month in the Sales Maven Society. This is really my monthly coaching program. You get access to me in coaching calls twice a month. You get access to training content, and you get access to an amazing private group where you can post questions to me and you can get feedback and connect with some really fantastic people, including Julie Fry, because she's in there too. You can join the Sales Maven Society by going to salesmavensociety.com. And if you enter the coupon code 47TRIAL, 47 trial, it'll take $100 off your first month of membership. So you can join for only $47. Come hang out with us. We'd love to have you in there. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great rest of your day. Take care.
Thanks for listening to Sales Maven. Visit us online at yoursalesmaven.com/maven for more resources to boost your confidence and skills.